Good evening, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. Feeling a little better today. Still having an occasional cough, but nothing magnanimous. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into the video that I wasn't able to make last night, and we're gonna take a little bit of a look at the longer range forecast here. So one thing I've noted is there have been a few changes to the trends here, and not to mention there's been a couple things that I missed in that last video that I'm going to touch on. It's a lot to cover, so buckle your seatbelts. You might see some timestamps on the bar on our video bar here, so that way you can skip to the parts that may be most relevant to you. And without further ado, we'll get into it. Starting with the severe threat. As of right now, there's no immediate threat within the next 72 hours, but when we look towards days 4 through 8, potential is too low for day 4, 5, and 6, but then day 7, and we did talk about this. This was around the January 11th, January 12th time frame, but day 7 and 8 are both predictability too low. That's in association with that system that that I was talking about in the last video. We'll go over that a little bit, but we're mainly going to be talking mostly about what's been going on around the west. Atmospheric river, which is absolutely insane to look at, and I might even sneak in a quick peek at what it looks like on satellite as well. So here's a look at this atmospheric river. You can see it just literally flowing into the northwest right now, bringing heavy rain and snow, depending on elevation particularly. Some of the valleys will possibly get snow over the coming days. In fact, it's almost likely. But the greatest totals are going to be towards those mountain peaks, especially towards the northwest. And then also we have to include the Sierra Nevada region. Then over here we can see this secondary moisture plume that's flowing in from the Baja, and this is going to end up causing more showers and thunderstorms, more disturbed weather, more towards the eastern half of the country where things are a bit warmer. We'll also have to watch as this storm system kind of rolls in here and interacts with that moisture, making for another snow event possible around the northern tier of the U.S. So let's go ahead and look at the snow that's fallen over the last 72 hours. And there's been a couple of surprises here. This is over towards Wisconsin and Minnesota here. Some pretty high totals. Not too far out of not too far out of what I was expecting, but some of these places I wasn't expecting about a foot of snow. You can see it indicated a little bit better right here. I put it in a bad spot. But a lot of areas around southern Minnesota in particular, south central Minnesota, about a foot of snow. UP and Michigan, we were kind of expecting that, but we were expecting a little bit lighter on the totals. Plenty of areas where we're seeing about 6 to 8 inches, and then that still is pretty widespread into Wisconsin, especially in towards central and southern Wisconsin. Still is some snow expected to fall over these regions, but not nearly as significant as what we were seeing before. So these totals are not final yet. We'll have to see what today's totals bring in along with this. That being said, we have our next system that's rolled in to the western half of the U.S. Denver didn't quite get snow over there, but just off to the west here, we have plenty of mountainous regions where we were getting about 4 to 6 inches in a lot of places. A couple of isolated spots where we got above a foot. And the further west we go, these totals start to increase more. Southern Idaho and northern Utah, we're looking at some higher totals, about a foot, maybe a foot and a half in some spots. Same with Montana, central Idaho, or towards the just under the panhandle, I would say. Looks like we have areas where we had seen about 6 to 8, and widespread areas of 2 to 4 inches. And then, of course, the grand totals are going to be over towards the Sierra Nevadas. This place has been getting walloped all season, and even through a good bit of fall. So a lot of places are seeing 18 inches. Some places are going to be at about 30 inches, 3 feet possibly even, which is crazy, and there's still plenty more action to go here. So that being said, now let's go ahead and take a look at what we're dealing with right now. So here is the tail end of this little cold blast that started to work its way into the eastern half of the U.S. It's not a very deep cold blast, but it's enough to cause problems and maybe get people sick, because there were a couple points here where we started to get towards 70. Now we're not even making 60. So just make sure you have plenty of tea, plenty of warm drinks, and be ready to fight this off. Cough drops are probably a must. That being said, here's our next system rolling in. Expect it to bring a little bit of active activity towards the Midwest here. Mostly, I think this will be in the form of rain. This next system looks a little bit more impressive here, and this is towards the 8th. But this mostly will end up being a northwest system. By the time this rolls east, there's not much cold air to go with it, so this isn't going to bring any big-time snow, but this is going to bring showers and thunderstorms for a lot of people. The intensity of this is questionable, but for the most part, I'm thinking there isn't going to be too much that comes from this. This system moves out through the 11th, and then we get a little bit of a warm sector here, a little warm nose that develops. And then here's our next big system right here. And then when we scroll this back up and head into the 12th, this is when things start to get really interesting. Look at that. Get a low that's trying to close off here. Neutral tilt, maybe even a little bit of a negative tilt. And then we see this little sector right here. Forcing looks pretty strong with this one, so I'm thinking it'll be more of a linear type event. Can't rule out a few tornadoes, but I'm thinking more damaging winds will be the dominant threat with this system here as we head into the 12th. And then from that point, this will be continuing to move off. Probably a couple of more lines of storms will roll through. A little bit of cold air may sneak in on the back side of this, and we'll have to keep an eye on that towards the 13th. Because this could bring snow up towards the Appalachians here, and maybe even parts of the Carolinas. We'll have to see how this trends. And then from there, there's another little cold shot that tries to sneak in behind it on the 14th. We'll have to watch and see what kind of moisture may meet up with it. Then we have another system further up to the north, and this could bring a little bit of frozen precipitation, possibly even some ice up towards the northern U.S., maybe towards North Dakota here. We'll have to see how this trends, and of course we'll also look at the GFS, and then things really start to pick up. Oops, I got a sounding I don't want. But as we head into the 16th, though, look at this system that begins to pop up here. This one's a pretty robust system from the looks of it, and this drags in plenty of cold air behind it, so we're going to be watching this one extremely close over the next 10 days. This is towards the end of the model run here, and we'll continue it on from the GFS. For the most part, I wouldn't be expecting to see anything super dissimilar through the first 72 hours. Once we get to about 120, we might see a few discrepancies here and there. But for the most part, it's pretty similar. GFS is about the same. Like I said, first 72 hours. Bigger storm system comes. This does have these storms a little bit stronger, but not by much. The cold air, it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more cold air with this system versus the Euro. And this system takes more of a tilt to begin with, but this also seems like it tries to become a closed off or maybe even a cutoff low. And the forcing with this is about the same, maybe a little bit more subtle. So you could see maybe an embedded supercell in here with a tornado, but for the most part, I'm thinking damaging winds still will be the main threat with this. There's a little bit more cold air that funnels in as this becomes more of a closed off low here, and then we can watch the GFS bring that 540 line pretty far south, depending on the moisture that may come in behind this, which I honestly think the moisture is going to end up outrunning the cold. But if there is any moisture that can funnel in with this, could be some bursts of snow in places that aren't used to seeing it. Maybe towards eastern Georgia. Maybe the Appalachians definitely will get. I'm thinking the Appalachians definitely will get snow with this setup, and then even towards the far western borders of North and South Carolina, we could be seeing snow. We'll also have to watch the Mid-Atlantic as well. With this setup, if it unfolds, that's very favorable for snow for these guys. Then, of course, this system ends up looking like it's a little bit warmer. which could limit freezing rain potential over there, which is actually good news. I'm pretty sure no one wants freezing rain. And then, of course, we have a really robust system here on the 16th that I'm going to be tracking the mess out of, because I can see a little bit of a warm sector here. But what's really troubling is this warm sector starts to build more towards the south in an area that is all becoming all too familiar with this over towards the Arklatex, which I'm a little bit nervous about. And I can almost see, even just from the vorticity alone, that there's a decent bit of Gulf moisture flow with this. So this could be a big problem. And as this moves further and further east, that forcing isn't very intense. So we could get multiple modes of storms here ahead of this cold front, which could mean multiple rounds of severe weather, including a threat for tornadoes. Given the fact that we're almost 300 hours out, this could look entirely different by the time we get to this point, but this is something that will definitely be talked about on the channel, so brace for that. And then we see a few smaller shortwave systems that come in, and it looks like the warming trend continues for the south in particular after this point, as we head a little bit further past the mid-month. But we can also see that the potential is there for maybe another shortwave system to spark off maybe a marginal chance of severe weather at this time. And we'll watch this evolve as time goes on. And then another big system and maybe another cold blast could be setting up for the end of the month for the country, as we see these isobars start to tighten up together as we get to the end of the model run. So that's pretty much what the GFS and the Euro are showing us right now at the vorticity. Let's go ahead and kind of translate that over to a way that more people are familiar with, and that is through our surface precip. So we'll just run this in a loop here. Just kind of see how things verify with this, because looking through this is kind of going to give us a little bit more confirmation or validity behind what the vorticity is showing us right now. So here comes our bigger system that's around the 10th, the 11th time frame here. Pretty robust looking low pressure as we get to 1,004 millibars. Interesting on the storm modes with that. It looks more so like it's going to be linear, but we'll have to watch that really closely. And then when we get to the 16th, we'll have to watch that next big storm, and I think that one's going to be huge if it holds as it is right now. So, oops, didn't mean to hit that button. Thought it was going to pause it. So we'll switch this over now, and we'll kind of look at the same thing here. Now, keep in mind, of course, once we get to about 300 hours out, a lot of this is going to turn into hearsay, so to speak. But one thing to note here is this system that comes in around the 10th and 11th does look like it brings a lot heavier snow than what the Euro is giving. And this load doesn't really seem like it strengthens heavily. Like I said, this is mainly looking like a linear threat on the 11th, or more so damaging winds. But look how but that's one interesting thing there to note. I'm going to kind of pause this, go back towards the 12th and the 13th. So we'll move this forward just a bit. And what looks like the GFS does favor a little bit of moisture coming in from the backside. Interestingly enough, from the Great Lakes. And this sneaks in on the backside of the system, has some snow lingering in for the Appalachians. And then this also becomes a moderately sizable coastal storm, but it just runs out of moisture for a lot of areas towards like the Long Island area as of right now. We'll have to see what that ends up doing. Meanwhile, we already know what's going on over here towards the west. You guys have been getting walloped. This looks like it's going to continue, unfortunately, especially over towards the northwest in California. As we look more so towards the central part of the west, I think you're going to start to lean more towards rain a bit, unless you get in the very far, much higher elevations. So I'll move this up to the next storm system here. Already looks more robust than the last ones. We're sitting at about 1,001 millibars. GFS kind of has this lingering. It's kind of uncertain about this given how far out we are. We're looking at about 288 hours out. It's kind of hard to have a lot of confidence in that, considering we only have maybe a handful of models that are really reliable that even look this far, which is crazy. And occasionally they're right. A lot of times this ends up changing. And then towards the 20th, another system, a little bit more of a short wave, bringing in more rain. This Clipper system looks to bring more snow towards the Great Lakes on the 22nd, and that's pretty much the end of this model run. So let's go ahead and really kind of dive into things here. We'll start out by just looking at the blend of models, really, because I mean, at this point, the most of the snow totals on the other models haven't come in yet, given the fact that this is fresh off the press here. So when we look at the blend of models right now, and this is very much prone to changing because we're looking at the maximum time allotted, 240 hours out. It's 10 days. We can see that we have ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous, snow totals. And normally you don't see this kind of stuff from the blend of models, but 5 feet of snow over towards the Sierra Nevadas. Unbelievable. Probably some locally higher totals are possible. I would even say likely. So over towards the northwest here, even we have some ridiculous snowfall totals. We're getting up to about 3 to 4 feet there as well. The further west we go, the totals kind of let up a bit. Like I said, it's mainly going to be towards the mountainous regions where these totals are going to be really spiked, so to speak. We have some areas over here where we're getting towards about 4 inches of snow, 4 feet of snow, excuse me, 4 inches, if only. 4 feet of snow over here. And then once we look a little bit further to the east, we're starting to get back towards the 3 feet and then 2 feet. Still, it's going to be a very healthy snow event or snow events for the western half of the U.S. here. And look at even some parts of northwestern Arizona getting into the action here, where we could get up to maybe a foot of snow in some spots. Some places getting up to about 2 to 4 inches easily. We will be watching Denver for maybe about an inch or two of snow, but for the most part, I think it's going to be relatively light for you guys. We'll have to see how things continue to trend with this, but for the most part, not expecting too much out of it. These storm systems also look like they're moving pretty fast in comparison to what we were dealing with a month or two ago. Towards the Midwest, it's going to be a lot warmer, so we're looking at trace to about maybe an inch of snow in a lot of regions. Towards the Northeast, though, things get a little bit more interesting, and that's where we start to look at some totals of about maybe 4 to 6 inches, and then there's a little swath right here where we're getting up to about 6 to 8, maybe even some spots getting up to 10 inches, flirting with that foot mark. But we'll have to see where things go here. The blend of models actually has a healthy bit of snow for the Northeast, especially towards New York City, Philadelphia, all of you guys. Baltimore, looks like you guys aren't going to get a whole lot out of that. Towards West Virginia, it looks like you guys are getting a pretty good bit of snow here, especially towards the eastern part, where we're getting up to about 6 to 8 inches, maybe even higher, and locally higher amounts. Keep in mind, this isn't from just one storm. This is from a series of storms over 10 days. So this isn't going to happen like all at once. Just want to make sure that I'm very clear on that. One other thing is looking over towards the Appalachians, we could be seeing up to about maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 inches at most over the next 10 days. We'll have to see how things progress with that. But I do have pretty good confidence that you guys are likely to see something out of this. All right, and one last look here. We're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a comparison between all three of the models. Some of these are going to be, of course, a little bit more aggressive than the blend of models here. But the Euro looks a tad bit more aggressive, but not too far off. Sierra Nevadas, it's no question that these guys are going to be walloped. About 5 feet of snow possible over the next 10 days. Unreal, but right around here where we're over towards central Idaho, about 5 feet of snow. A little bit more bold, but not out of the question. The snow stays pretty far to the west, more so towards the mountains. It looks like with the Euro, it seems more like Denver gets stiffed here. We do get a little bit of a swath of snow that develops over here towards eastern Montana, tries to sneak its way into North Dakota, and a few more pockets where there could be some locally heavier bands towards Minnesota and Wisconsin. We also have to, interestingly enough, watch Missouri. Some locally higher totals also will be existing through the Appalachians here. This also seems to have the snow band pushed a little bit further back with West Virginia here, where it was kind of hanging more towards eastern Virginia. This looks a little bit more towards central, just a tiny bit. There isn't as heavily of a organized snow band that develops here, and this also stiffs the Long Island region. New York City, Pennsylvania, it looks like you get minimal snow with this setup. So we'll switch this over to the Canadian, and this has it dragged out a little bit further to the south as far as the Northeast is concerned. Pretty similar look over towards the west. Interestingly enough, instead of that little bit of a snow band that seems like it's trying to set itself up over Missouri, it seems to be set up with Kansas in this look with the Canadian. But other than that, the totals are pretty much the same. And then also I've noticed that in comparison with the Euro and the blend of models here, it looks like more of the snow is towards the UP of Michigan and a little bit north of the border, really. Not too far out of the question either, but that's just what we're dealing with here with the Canadian. Lastly, we have the GFS. GFS always tends to be a little bit more aggressive with the totals here. And that's definitely the case as we look at our models now with 18Z. It looks like towards the Adrian Dax, you guys are expected to get slammed by the GFS. It's a little bit further east as far as the mid-Atlantic is concerned. I would say eastern West Virginia has to be of interest. And then also we're flirting with some snowfall totals towards the Washington, D.C. and Maryland regions. Long Island looks like you guys are in play for this one. Doesn't look like you'll get a lot out of this according to the GFS, but we'll have to see how things go with that. Some locally heavier totals towards the Appalachians, but as far as the Carolinas are concerned, it looks like a little bit more minimal snow. Towards the west, no real surprises there. Sierra Nevadas get slammed. A little bit lighter totals towards central Idaho and south central Idaho. And then other than that, it's pretty much the same here. So a lot going on with this system. We'll get a little bit more in depth throughout the weekend with this as time goes on. Or systems, I should say, because it's just going to be a train of them. And these could very well be historic. So we'll of course be watching them and pretty much documenting it here. But that's pretty much all I got for the material on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Really sorry I couldn't get through making a video yesterday. I just wasn't able to. I still feel a little bit off, but I'm not terrible. But that being said, if you liked anything I did in this video, definitely drop me a like. Let me know in the comments how you're feeling about the weather in your area, of course, too. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't. Also, share this to anyone that may find this useful. Because we'll definitely trying to get to about... the heck with it. I'll give it a shot. Trying to get to 300 subs by the 1-year anniversary of this channel. We've gotten close. We're close to 200 now. So, I have faith in you guys. I mean, either way, regardless of whether we get there or not, I appreciate you guys being here. And there will be plenty more videos to come, especially throughout the weekend. But next video will probably be tomorrow morning, just kind of covering the weekend forecast, which is a normal thing we do on the channel, by the way. So look forward to that. But until then, this has been Metalhead Weatherman. You guys have a good night, and I will see you soon.